UN Water to officially launch the SDG 6 Global Acceleration Framework. This framework will raise the ambition, commitment, and action to deliver the promise that we gave to save water and sanitation for all by 2030. You can find more information about the framework on the UN Water website, on the SDG 6 action space, where you can also submit your commitments towards accelerating the implementation of Goal 6. Before we start, some small technical issues for you to consider. We recommend for a best viewing experience to choose the side-by-side option view, which you can find on the upper right corner of the WebEx platform. If you choose the middle icon, you will see side-by-side, so you can see the presentation and the speaker at the same time. Feel free to also use the chat box for any comments or questions. You can select the chat box at the taskbar below on the screen, where you can also see the participants. On that chat box, you will also hopefully have seen that we have posted the agenda for this event and the Global Acceleration Framework link, as well as other links where the recording will be made available after our session. If you use Twitter, please follow us on the Twitter account of UN Water and help us spread the messages coming out of this event using the hashtags SDG6 on track, !HLPF, and global goals. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor now to Mr. Liu Zhenmin, the United Nations Undersecretary General for Economic and Social Affairs, who will co-chair this event together with Mr. Gilbert Humboldt, IFAD President, for his welcome remarks. Mr. Liu, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nicola. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all. Excellencies, distinguished colleagues and partners, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us at this special event to officially launch the SDG 6 Global Acceleration Framework. I'm very happy to be here, representing the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, UNDESA, at the High-Level Political Forum Secretariat, to co-host the event with Mr. Humboldt, who is the chairman of the UN Water. Special events have a distinct profile. During the high-level political forum, they have more visibility, more high-level participation, and have drawn the attention of a larger audience. And this is what we need right now in order to accelerate action on SDG 6, which aims to ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. A central objective of this event is to show a unified UN system in support of the SDG 6 Global Acceleration Framework. We also wish to draw commitments and high-level support from different stakeholders, including member states, civil society, and the private sector. This is a key opportunity to shape the political agenda in support of SDG 6 as we move towards major UN events on water, such as the PGA's high-level event in 2021 and the 2023 UN Water Decade Conference. Ladies and gentlemen, the SDG 6 Global Acceleration Framework is a direct response of the UN system to the Secretary General's call for a decade of action to deliver the Sustainable Development Goals. Indeed, accelerated action is needed now more than ever to put the world on track to realize the goals and their targets by 2030. We are all well aware that under the current rate of progress, we will not be able to achieve SDG 6. Moreover, the impacts of climate change and the COVID-19 crisis are jeopardizing the access of billions of people to safely manage drinking water, sanitation, and hygiene services. These are desperately needed to actually prevent the virus from spreading. This year's Secretary General's SDG progress report highlights that inadequate access to clean water, sanitation, and hygiene led to a total of 870,000 deaths already in 2016. Now, colleagues, I think only 71% of the global population use safely managed drinking water, and just 45% use safely managed sanitation services. This leaves 2.2 billion people without safely managed drinking water and 4.2 billion without safely managed sanitation. The poorest and the most vulnerable are affected disproportionately, including women, children, elder persons, persons with disabilities, migrants, and refugees. Just imagine how hard a day in your life would be without access to these basic services, which billions lack for their entire life. The current COVID-19 crisis has further accentuated these inequalities and pushed the marginalized even closer to the edge. For this reason, we must step up our actions to realize the commitment we made 5 years ago when the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development was adopted. We must prioritize access to water and sanitation as fundamental services for people, not only for their health and to prevent infection by the COVID-19, but also for their livelihoods and prosperity. Indeed, access to quality education and decent jobs are also key to building society's capacity for recovery. The SDG 6 Global Acceleration Framework we are launching today will provide the necessary boost to create more sustainable, resilient, and inclusive societies. Dear colleagues, for the implementation, multilateral cooperation will be essential. Harnessing the benefits of sharing data, information, and best practices is critical to implementing of effective and integrated national, regional, and international strategies. My department, DESA, is therefore proud to commit to the Global Acceleration Framework by supporting SDG 6 action space through the SDG Acceleration Action Platform, increasing our capacity building work on SDG 6 and providing the platform for annual high-level and multi-stakeholder moment to share progress on water and sanitation-related issues. I look forward to hearing from colleagues and partners today and in the near future on how they will contribute to accelerate progress towards SDG 6 in the coming 10 years. Distinguished colleagues and partners, only by raising ambition through strong political will and commitment at the highest level will we achieve SDG 6 and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. We count on you, all relevant actors and stakeholders, to scale up support and action. Dear colleagues, I now pass the floor to Mr. Gilbert Huombo, the Chair of the Water, for his remarks and to chair this session. Mr. Huombo, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, let me start by joining my voice to the one of USD Liu in welcoming you to this official launch of the SDG 6 Global Acceleration Framework. I also welcome the UN, our Secretary General, that will be with us later on, and representative from all sectors of society. It is so encouraging to see your commitment, your support, all of you that have registered and following us either in the panel or in the link that were provided. We have known for some time that SDG 6 is far off track. Global demand for water is rising, and water resources we know are becoming more polluted. This is why we were already working on the framework even before COVID. But this pandemic has clearly revealed the results of inaction. Chronic underfunding has left the poor more vulnerable than ever, with a first line of defense against the virus missing for billions of people globally. And when I mean first line, I mean water. In January, SG Gutierrez launched the Decade of Action to deliver the SDG by 2030, and this call to action rings even louder today. Water and sanitation must be a key component of our global COVID response. We have in front of us a unique opportunity to build back better. Today, you will hear about new ways of working together that the framework will introduce. In particular, I would like to highlight three key components. First, the framework increases the focus on concrete country support as part of the UN reform, and this has not been possible before. So today, through a reshaped resident coordinator system and a new generation of UN country teams, we will be able to provide access to expertise, technical assistance, and advocacy and support. Second, the framework will also improve coordination in delivering results for water and sanitation. There is a clear commitment of all the UN agency principals, I'm sure of that. And thirdly, the framework introduced an annual moment for high-level stock-taking to discuss the progress and share lessons learned and best practice. A key milestone will be on World Water Day in 2023, when we meet, hopefully face-to-face in New York for a UN conference on the midterm review of the Water Action Decade. And this is going to be the first UN conference on water since the 90s. So ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, we meet today at a time of urgency, a time of action. We just cannot accept to continue waiting and waiting. Let us use the framework to together tackle our challenge and deliver as one. So I thank you so much for your attention, and I would like to welcome His Excellency Ambassador Tijani Mohamed Ban, the President of the General Assembly, who will be providing us with his opening remark. Excellency Ambassador, you have the floor, please.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by thanking the co-chairs for giving me the opportunity to express my support to the renewed international commitment for SDG 6. I would like to congratulate all the UN agencies, particularly UN Water, on the successful launch of SDG 6 Global Accelerated Framework. We all know water is life, yet COVID-19 has added a whole new life to its value. Hand washing remains a key part of the response to stop the spread of the virus. Sadly, over 2 billion people in our world do not have access to hand washing facilities at home, and another 1 billion get it only intermittently. Even before the pandemic, access to water was recognized as key to sustainable development, so vividly expressed in the 2030 Agenda. On one hand, human health and productivity require safe drinking water and sanitation. On the other, water resource allocation, management, and sustainability remain vital to unlocking the full potential of the global economy, including in the agricultural sector, which is the mainstay of many developing countries. We must prioritize domestic and subsistence needs. It's not possible to eradicate poverty without ensuring clean water accessibility for human needs. Excellencies, water security is crucial for maintaining peace among households, communities, and in fact, even nations. Almost 60% of fresh water flows through over 250 water basins distributed between 148 countries. Given the fragmented distribution, the only way we can manage the global water resources efficiently is through multilateral cooperation. The goal to provide safe and affordable drinking water for all by 2030 will remain elusive without harmony and synergy in our actions and policies relating to water. We have seen the fruits of the world's collective wisdom in the form of the SDGs, which for the first time set the targets and indicators for hygiene. In the implementation phase, we need a similar commitment from the international community. Currently, the low and middle income countries lose over 800,000 people every year due to poor water sanitation and hygiene facilities. Although open defecation has sharply declined in recent decades, the challenge still persists. To leave no one behind, let us focus on those who still remain deprived of such basic sanitation facilities. As population surge and temperatures rise, the stress on water and sanitation infrastructure is exacerbating. In many regions, drought is escalating water scarcity, triggering the vicious cycle of land degradation and economic deprivation of vulnerable communities. Luckily, we have the solutions and technologies to overcome the challenges. What we need is the political commitment to scale up the solution and make them cost-effective. Certainly, economic slowdown has constrained our fiscal space, but we can overcome the challenge through improved system efficiency based on an integrated approach for clean water supply, sanitation, and wastewater management. To improve sustainability, we must focus on every stage of the water cycle, from freshwater extraction, distribution, usage, collection, treatment to the use of treated wastewater and its release to the environment. It's also vital from the perspective of climate change mitigation and adaptation strategies. To deliver on the promise of SDG 6, the launch of Global Action Framework is reassuring. It aims to target those farthest behind first, which resonates with the commitment of the 2030 Agenda. I'd also like to commend the plan to strengthen multi-stakeholder cooperation and coordination. Given its unifying theme, the initiative will help galvanize synergies to accelerate the progress toward 2030 targets. Excellencies, distinguished participants, as we build back better, let us ensure the access to clean water and sanitation for everyone. If we succeed, it will secure, among others, much-needed privacy for women and girls in many rural areas, save them from the ordeal of fetching water over long distances, free up time for education and other productive activities, and improve their own and their offspring's health and life expectancy. In fact, achieving SDG 6 will fulfill a fundamental human right. It will be a sign of a more humane world with fewer inequalities. I thank you.
I thank the President of the General Assembly, His Excellency Tijani Mohammed Ban. Thank you so much for your support and encouraging words to us. Now, I would like to move to the next session and welcome my Chief Executive's colleagues. Please, before giving the floor, bear with me that I need to remind all of us what our teams have agreed that we will do every effort to contain our intervention within 3 minutes, please. With that, let me welcome Akim Steiner. Akim, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Gilbert, to our dear PGA, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, a good morning and good afternoon to you. As I was preparing for our session this morning on this SDG 16 Global Acceleration Framework, I was making my cup of coffee, and just the act of turning on a tap, filling my kettle and making a cup of coffee, as I was reading my notes, made me think, what would I do if suddenly the water supply to my house would cease in New York City? We take it for granted in so many parts of the world, and yet half of humanity does not have access to clean water in their homes. And the importance of clean water has been brought into sharp relief, as you already alluded to, by COVID-19. And I think one of the great tragedies of the last few weeks is that we have yet again seen how inequality in access to basic services and supplies of clean water or food has created such a differential impact on communities also. The centrality of WHO's guidance initially seemed to be something that was out of reach for a significant number of people across the globe. And I think we have seen the struggle that people have had to cope with. And I'm also reminded of that wonderful example of a young, I think it was a 12, 13-year-old boy in Kenya, inventing a new contraption to try and provide his community with a way in which to have a dispenser of water without having to use hands, and using a foot pedal, and winning a prize from President Kenyatta. So yes, it is a central issue, and I'm very grateful to UN Water for having brought forward this global acceleration framework, and UNDP is very pleased to join in moving forward with this. I do not need to remind you, because our PGA just spoke to it, and so did my colleague Liu Jimin and usual that in trying to move SDG 6 forward, we also embedded in the larger context of the Sustainable Development Goals. As always, an SDG homes in on a particular issue that needs to be solved, but very often the linkages to others are very clear, whether it is SDG 1 and poverty, probably the most defining one that is inextricably linked also to achieving SDG 6. But also SDG 16 and governance, because water and access to water and who has water and who has not and at what price is very much an issue of governance. And then I'm sure later on Inger Andersen will also speak to the broader dimensions of environmental change. Water is for more and more people becoming a very scarce commodity, never mind having access to it in their houses. We already know that well over a third of the world will face some form of water distress in the coming years. These are very serious developments and point also to the linkages to SDG 12 and 13 and 15. This is where I see also the contribution of UNDP to this accelerator framework, hopefully bringing additional value. It is, first of all, linking to the governance frameworks, because how governments, how public service providers, local authorities are able to look at who needs water, what are the policies that are needed, what is transparency also in the provision of water services is critical. And just in the last few weeks, I have learned about examples that speak to the very immediacy of this also. Our work in the Maldives, for example, helping to bring safe and reliable water service to over 100,000 people on the country's outer islands, or with the Comoros to revise water codes for the equitable use of water and protection of water resources, both done with the support of the Green Climate Fund. Since we only have a couple of minutes, I will stop here and simply say that we are very pleased and proud to be part of this effort. We welcome the Global Acceleration Framework. We thank you UN Water. And above all, let us take this moment as one in which we also realize that the immediacy of COVID-19 is one dimension of a larger challenge, which is building forward better. And certainly this acceleration framework is a great illustration of that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Akim, and thank you for highlighting the role that UNDP is and expected to play in this nexus between the different SDGs from poverty to governance, climate change, and others. Thank you so much, Akim. Now I would like to give the floor to the Director General of UNESCO. Audrey, I believe you're there. You have the floor, please.
Merci beaucoup. Merci, Gilbert. Excellency, dear friends from the UN family, as I speak from UNESCO, I'll start with a verse of poetry, but I'll hold on in 3 minutes, I promise. The American poet Thoreau said that wrote that the life in us is like the water in the river. And we can translate that to today and to be more down to earth on our SDGs. And you mentioned and you said how much all the SDGs are linked to our action on water, be it poverty, health, gender equality, and of course, environment. And one of the main issues in this respect is unequal access to water. This was the message of the World Water Development Report that was published during the COVID-19 pandemic from the UN Water family, which recalled that 2.2 billion people lacked access to drinking water, and with an issue particularly severe in Africa, with 1/3 of the population impacted. And this situation is likely to be exacerbated by climate change, which was the special focus of the report this year. So during the crisis, during the COVID-19, UNESCO tried to strengthen its training modules on water education and hygiene with a series of webinars. We've also launched, during the crisis in April, a solar water disinfection technique for rural communities in Africa in partnership with the African Union. But this is just during the crisis. But more generally, what we know is, as it's been said, the COVID did not create water inequalities, it amplified them. And this is why, above our responses to the emergency, we're trying to strengthen our long-term actions on water. I'd like to mention a very important program, the Intergovernmental Hydrological Program, IHP, which will embark on a new operational phase with 193 member states that covers scientific cooperation, research, water resource monitoring and management, and water education. And this new phase of the program will, I think, or can play or contribute to the SDG 6 Global Acceleration Framework. More generally, through our centers, through our university chairs on water, through the work that we do on the recommendation for open science, for instance, that will be ready by 2021, we try to work on a daily basis to step up the circulation of knowledge and solution. And we know that we cannot afford to do without multilateralism on water issue. We know that 60% of the world's fresh water flows cross national boundaries. So this is a case where multilateralism should go without saying, but we need to prove it. We need to achieve real results. And this is the goal of us here today. And UNESCO, through the full scope of its mandate, science, of course, but also education and culture, is fully committed to this goal within the UN family. So thank you very much for organizing this meeting today. Thanks, Gilbert. Over to you.
Merci beaucoup, Audrey. Sincerely, let me, in the name of the UN Water colleagues, I would really like to express how grateful we are for the work that UNESCO is doing in the coordination role of the UN World Water reports. Very, very high-level report that together we produce. Now, I would like to move to the Director General of FAO, my neighbor here from Rome, the Eternal City. Don't you have the floor, please.
Ladies, gentlemen, and excellencies, good afternoon. And I saw the Mr. Liu and so many friends on the screen. So the pandemic forced us to think over and revisit a lot of things. Water is one of the tops, which is the fundamental issues for agri-food system. As Akil mentioned, he realized water is not the non-payer things. So water scarcity is a heavy flooding, two extremes. How to manage them properly for sustainable development are historical headache challenge in the world. Water scarcity, climate change, and drought are main headers in our efforts to make our agro-food system resilient and sustainable. FAO is committed to support the members in their efforts of reaching target 6.4 of substantially increasing water use efficiency across all sectors and addressing water scarcity. We do so through a number of programs and initiatives by strengthening the methodology, development, and collection of water data and information. FAO Aquastate databases is an important tool in supporting the countries in reducing water stress and increasing water use efficiency. By promoting ways to reduce the water footprint through the crop water productivity, the FAO Water Productivity Open Access Portal, WAPO, strengthening members' digital capacity by providing near real-time and promote science data to help policymakers to make informed decisions on drought preparedness, while producing more nutritious food with less water. By securing access to quality water, especially for smallholder farmers, including women and children, farmers' smart irrigation and smart wash programs contribute to closing the gender gap while ensuring that water is sufficiently allocated, accessible, and the natural resource space protected. By strengthening members' water policies through the One Water, One Health program that recognize the intrinsic role of water in protecting human, animal, and eco health. Together with our government, research, and private program partners, and we will reduce agricultural water pollution while promoting water and neutrally recycling and safe use of the fit-for-purpose water. Under the Paris Agreement, 88% of the nationally determined contribution mentioned water-related measures in the adaptation plan. As a response, FAO Partnership Program Global Framework on Water Scarcity, or simply WASACH, accelerates joint action to cope with water scarcity in agriculture and in changing climate. FAO is committed to action pillars of the global accession framework. And we will continue to work with our partners to build and enhance the human and institutional capacity in the water sector. We will do so through FAO New Hand-in-Hand initiative, an evidence-based country-led and country-owned initiative to accelerate agricultural transformation and sustainable rural development. The initiative provides government investment partners with the necessary tools to identify key opportunities for innovation, investment, and transformation action. Together, as one UN, we can bring real change at the country level, accelerate achieving SDGs. Without water, without the interactive civilization. You can count on FAO to be your partner in this. Thank you. Over to you, my friend, Mr. Humboldt.
Thank you so much, Dong Yu, particularly highlighting the linkage that we know very well between water and agriculture and the role that you play in the data collection and analysis. I'm also particularly glad that you highlighted the peculiarity for the smallholders and the gender gap that we have in those analysis. If Tedros is online, I would like to move to WHO and pass the floor now to the Director General of WHO. Tedros, please.
Mr. Gilbert Ngubo, Chair of the UN Water and President of IFAD, Mr. Liu Zeneman, Under-Secretary General for Economic and Social Affairs, and Your Excellency, Mr. Tijani Mohammed Bande, President of the General Assembly, colleagues, heads of agencies, excellencies, distinguished guests, and friends. Water, sanitation, and hygiene are cornerstones of public health. Yet over a third of people around the world still lack access to these necessities, putting them at high risk of disease and malnutrition, and impacting the safe delivery of health care. COVID-19 has underscored just how essential wash services are for living healthy lives. Washing your hands is one of the most effective ways to stop the virus spreading. But this is not possible for many of the 3 billion people without access to water and soap in their homes. And even where the supply does exist, it can be precarious. People who have been forced out of work due to the pandemic may struggle to pay their water bills. And even some utilities are having difficulty meeting demand and making ends meet. That's why WHO is honored to be joining the SDG 6 Global Acceleration Framework to drive solutions around the delivery of access to safe and clean water and sanitation. We have applied the lessons from the SDG 3 Global Action Plan to this new framework. The better the multilateral system is in supporting countries, the faster they will reach the SDGs. WHO is committed to working in solidarity with governments and other UN agencies to scale up in country capacity building. And we will keep collecting high quality data to support evidence-based decision making. 2 weeks ago, WHO with our partners launched the Hand Hygiene for All initiative. It aims to mobilize UN agencies, governments, the private sector, and civil society to integrate hand washing in all aspects of life. I'm confident the acceleration framework launched today will build on the campaign and other efforts to make hygiene and safe water a universal reality. I thank you. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank DG Ghebreyesus. Thank you so much, Tedros. And again, I want to thank you personally with not only with what you are doing in this pandemic season, but also what your team in the UN Water very, very active team. I have this opportunity to mention that to you. I would like to move to Maimuna from UN Habitat. Maimuna, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Your Excellencies, the President of the General Assembly, Mr. Secretary General, Honorable Ministers, fellow UN Principal, Excellencies, friends, ladies and gentlemen. I am pleased to commit UN Habitat support for the SDG 6 Global Acceleration Framework, and I would like to congratulate UN Water for leading this crucial SDG 6 framework and UN DESA for steering the decade of action. COVID-19 has shown how critical it is to provide access to safe water and sanitation services to ensure public health and resilient local economies. Ladies and gentlemen, urbanization continues to accelerate, putting increasing pressure on our cities and to provide basic public services. These are still more than 1 billion people worldwide living in slum and informal settlements. I would like to share with you 4 key messages. 1, we must act quickly to prevent the spread of COVID-19 amongst urban poor in informal settlement and slums where most residents do not have access to water and sanitation. I call upon all of us to work together to address the wash needs of slum dwellers and other vulnerable populations. Number 2, we need strong water and sanitation operators now more than ever. The current crisis has shown the need to come together and move from just-in-time to a just-in-case approach. Peer-to-peer exchanges through water operators partnership can fill critical gaps and share solutions. Number 3, we need to support cities and communities to tackle the threat of climate change. Water and sanitation service providers are adjusting to this reality and will need more support to innovate and find new ways to ensure business continuity and quality of service. 4th, we need to track progress more accurately and ensure that data can inform decision-making and guide investment in cities. Current data on water and sanitation issues mask inequities in urban areas and often does not count slum and informal settlement. We need greater disaggregation and better data management system. Ladies and gentlemen, UN Habitat's Global Water Operator Partnership Alliance has for the past 12 years been helping to strengthen water and sanitation utilities around the world. It has been more critical to support public service providers for our health and well-being. This partnership has demonstrated that multilateral action is the basis for effective action in our globalized world. I am pleased to launch today the UN Habitat Catalog of Services that provides a sampling of how we can support national and local government partners and stakeholders to address their development challenges and advance sustainable and inclusive urban development using our services, expertise, and tools. So when national and local government, service providers, and other stakeholders work in a coordinated and integrated manner, we can fully leverage the potential that urbanization holds for a better life for all. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Maimouna Maud Sherif, the Executive Director of UN Habitat, particularly highlighting the 4 key messages, namely the COVID and the urban poor. Generally speaking, when we know that half of the population live in urban area without necessarily having access to clean water, it's really key. And also, I hope all of us will take note of the catalog of service that you are launching now and today. Thank you so much, Maimouna. I'm moving to UN Economic Commission for Europe, and I will really be pleased to pass the floor to Olga. Olga, if you're there, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Liu Zhenmin, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues. This discussion on water and sanitation is indeed very timely. However, as you expect, I don't have a good news for us. Progress towards SDG 6 is lagging behind. We need to speed up. In UNECE, we contribute to SDG 6 Global Acceleration Framework, particularly to the governance, data, information, capacity building accelerators. At a global level, we support countries to improve and monitor intersectoral transboundary water governance, focusing on development and financing of agreements in order to prevent conflicts and promote development. At the pan-European level, we will support countries to achieve access to water and sanitation for all and prevent diseases. COVID-19, as many of you mentioned, has shown that water, sanitation, and hygiene save lives. The protocol on water and health serviced by UNECE, together with WHO Europe, provides a practical tool for the 2030 agenda and also the accelerator framework. Its target setting and national reporting on water, sanitation, hygiene, and health are mechanisms to accelerate progress and realize the human rights to water and sanitation. It supports countries to prevent diseases such as COVID-19. I call on countries to ratify and implement the protocol. As we know, 60% of the world's freshwater flows shared basins. Therefore, achieving SDG 6 requires effective transboundary governance. Its target 6.5 requires countries to implement integrated water resources management, including through transboundary cooperation that is also crucial for peace, health, food, and energy. However, the first reporting on SDG indicator 652 by UNEC with UNESCO showed that we need greater progress. Only 17 of the reporting countries achieved the target in 2018. We need to enhance capacity and political will for cooperation, step up human and financial resources, establish legal and institutional frameworks. I would like to call on all actors to contribute: countries, basin organizations, international financial institutions, UN agencies, and NGOs. UNEC will support development and implementation of agreements through guidance, projects on the ground, capacity building in the framework of our Convention on the Protection and Use of Transboundary Watercourses and International Lakes, known as Water Convention. This convention provides a unique global, legal, and intergovernmental UN platform for the peaceful management of shared waters. Since 1992, and following its opening to all UN member states in 2016, it now counts 44 parties. I welcome the most recent party, Ghana, which acceded last week. 20 countries are in the accession process, and more than 120 participate in the convention's activities. Also, the Secretary General is calling upon all countries to exceed the 1992 Water Convention and the 1997 United Nations Watercourses Convention. Thank you for your attention. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much, Olga Irova, for your intervention. I would like to particularly highlight the importance of the Water Convention that you are really working on, and also an opportunity to thank both you and Audrey for the good cooperation between the Economic Commission for Europe and UNESCO in those matters. Please make sure that we all turn off our mic when we are not speaking. With this, I would like to welcome WMO, Professor Callas, if you are there. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Gilbert, and it's great to see so many colleagues and dear ambassadors and your excellencies. It's a pleasure to address you, and I'm happy to contribute to this event, and I'd like to thank DESA for organizing this event. As you know, WMO is a specialized agency on weather, climate, and water, and we are also operating global observing system for Earth observations consisting of weather, water, and climate parameters, and we are also contributing to ocean observing systems. And these real-time observations, they are basis of weather, climate, and water services as well, and we are in charge of that. And then we are also very much dealing with climate, and we are having climate reports, and we are also hosting IPCC here in Geneva. It's a little bit misleading to talk about global warming, which is often used in English-speaking countries, because the main impacts of climate change, they are felt through water. And during the past 10 years, we have seen 2 billion people suffering from flooding problems, and we have seen 1.5 billion people suffering from drought problems. And unfortunately, because of climate change, these events are becoming more frequent, and that's why we have to deal with those challenges. And when we talk about disasters, water is also a driver there, and we are dealing with the melting of the glaciers, lack of water. We are talking about flooding problems, drought problems, and also coastal inundation problems. And to be successful in climate adaptation disaster risk reduction, we have to pay attention to the water, the observing system of the water, and also related services and also related science. And besides water shortages for agriculture, energy, human life, and industry, we have to pay attention to population growth. And for example, in Africa and southern part of Asia, combination of water shortages and population growth, they are causing a special problem. And I would also, besides tackling the water challenge, it would be very much recommended to tackle the population growth problem. We have been working together with several of the colleagues who were speaking before me, and also a few governments and also development partners to build the Sustainable Development Goal 6 accelerator, Water Climate 1, and I'd like to thank many of you colleagues for joining that, and I just heard that UNDP decided to join us also today, so thanks Akim for that. And our basic idea is to improve the water observing systems, enhance the service skills at the country level, and help countries to adapt to climate change and growing amount of disasters and the impacts on various sectors. And we are interested in launching this exercise next summer. We are preparing this consortium now, and we have several donor countries and development partners who are happy to contribute also financially. And the ultimate goal is to see action at the country level, not to organize big meetings nor produce tons of papers, but to really enhance the preparedness of the countries in this respect. With these words, thanks for the opportunity to speak, and thanks Gilbert for sharing this so well.
Thank you so much for this key intervention. I wanted to please highlight the fact that the Water and Climate Coalition that you are spearheading is quite a good demonstration of what we're trying to do. So Petri, thank you so much, and all our support. I know the UN Water colleagues are very supportive of these initiatives. Inge, if you're there, I would like to give you the floor from UNEP, the Executive Secretary of UNEP, Inge Adelson. You have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Gilbert, and of course to His Excellency, President of the General Assembly, Mr. Tijani Mohamed Bande, for this event. Look, in the Botswana language, Setswana, it's worthwhile to know that the word for rain is pula, but pula also means blessing, and the national currency is called what? Pula, because rain is a blessing, and rain is and water is pula. So we need to understand that wealth that water brings to society. And to understand that, we need to have an understanding of the miracle of the hydrological cycle. This fact that it rains, precipitation, it evaporates from the lakes and the waters, it is filtered, there's transpiration in our ecosystems, and the whole thing cycles. But only about 1% of the surface of the world is actually fresh water. And so that cycle is not one that we can take for granted. It is engineered and supported by forests, by ecosystems, by the very functioning of the Earth system. So let us understand that water and water access is not something that is just about pipes. It is very much about safeguarding nature. That's what the Botswana people knew, and that's why they called it a blessing, and that's why we need to understand that water, nature, and humanity have to go hand in hand. And those watersheds, those last watersheds, are the factories, the water factories of the world. Those tropical forests are the water factories of the world. So therefore, we cannot drain our wetlands and cut down our forests indiscriminately and assume that that cycle will continue. And that leads me to an understanding that we need to have about the value that ecosystems have, that ecosystem valuation. No, it is not about putting dollar signs on trees, but it is about understanding that if we don't have those services that nature provides, we have nothing. So as we're now rolling out these stimulus packages, let us now consider not only, obviously, to use it for water supply and sanitation, it goes without saying, let us understand also that it needs to go into protecting the very essence of life itself, the regulating functions of life on Earth. And access to safe water is, of course, an essence here, whether we are talking malaria or cholera or typhoid fever, as Tedros has so eloquently said. A second point that I wanted to make is around how efficient, or may I say inefficient, we are about the water that we do use. Now, we need about 70% more or less of that water that we have, that fresh water goes into agriculture, and that's an important element. But let us understand that if food was a country, it would be the third largest emitter of greenhouse gases because of food waste. If food waste, was a country, it would come after the two highest emitters in terms of CO2. So all that water that we've used to produce all that food that we're throwing away or gets lost in the supply chain is essentially water, virtual water that is thrown right down the literal drain. And so whilst 821 million people go to bed hungry, we need to not only have equity in the way we produce our food, but we need to ensure that we do not waste so that we can deal with efficiency of water. And similarly, if I may say so, we need to take that right into SDG 12 and understand the massive amount of water that the productivity that we produce. To produce one vehicle, one car, 400,000 liters of water. To produce one hamburger, 2,400 liters of water. So let us understand then the pressure that our consumption patterns are putting of water. And so the efficiency with which we have to use it. Third, pollution. We at UNEP are the proud hosts of a number of conventions, including the chemical conventions that deal with a significant amount of chemicals. And unless we adhere to the commitments that we've made under these conventions, we are further toxifying and making impossible to use that water that otherwise is produced for us free of charge by the hydrological cycle that I spoke about earlier on. And it has been reflected by others who spoke before, and especially by the president of the PGA, the imperative of the shared water resources that we need to manage in multilateral settings. Gender has been referred to, so I will not go there. Let me just say that in terms of the conventions that countries, member states have signed up for, Climate Change Convention, which also speaks about adaptation and mitigation and protection of forests, etc. The Biodiversity Convention, which speaks about the same, and the chemical conventions, Basel, Rotterdam, Stockholm, and Minamata. Those conventions together form the very foundation of life on Earth and form the very foundation of water systems protection. We at UNEP, we are so proud to be part of this accelerator. We have a number of activities already in this field, and I won't go into them, but we'll just mention that on the Water Quality Alliance, we are running it with 50 other members. It deals with interdisciplinary elements on the quality and pollution or lack of same. On freshwater work, we are working with Google, the European Commission's Joint Research Center, and obviously on IWRM, Integrated Water Resource Management, we're working with a whole host of partners. And we very much look forward to continue to working with everyone here, because what is clear for SDG 6, it'll take us all shoulders at the wheel to get there. With that, Gilbert, let me thank you very much for excellent chairing and for good partnership. Back over to you.
Thank you so much, Inge. Suffice for me to quote you in the nexus you established from water, nature, humanity. For me, it's really sum it up. And on behalf of the colleague from the UN Water, I also have to highlight the work that UNEP is doing in the integrated resource management, which is really key. achieve, in addition to what you mentioned. Let us move to the High Commissioner for Human Rights. We understand that Michelle Bachelet could not be with us for a reason that we all know. I'm so pleased to welcome Nada Al-Nashif, the Deputy High Commissioner. Nada, you have the floor, please.
Thanks very much, Gilbert. Excellencies, dear colleagues, friends. We welcome the launch of this framework in the 10th anniversary year of the General Assembly's formal recognition of the human rights to water and sanitation. Resolution 64/292 explicitly acknowledged that clean drinking water and sanitation are rights in themselves and that they are essential to the realization of all other human rights. Today, SDG 6 enshrines those rights as a core commitment of Agenda 2030. But we've already heard that we are not on track to achieve Agenda 2030, and the COVID-19 pandemic is pushing us even further back from those aspirational outcomes. We must therefore marshal our forces to recover effectively from this setback. Building back better requires repairing the gaps in human rights protection, which have made our society so vulnerable to this global upheaval. The pandemic should spur us to adopt strong transformative measures to heighten the powerful protection that human rights-based policies can provide by promoting public health, by promoting public confidence in official guidance, and by ensuring greater social and economic resilience. We need to deliver on the right to clean water and sanitation, and we need to address other forms of discrimination and the deeply entrenched inequalities that run disproportionately to affect women and children, minorities and indigenous people, older people, people with disabilities, migrants, and the urban poor. These are all inextricably linked to systemic weaknesses and underinvestment in the water and sanitation sector, as well as in education, health, and other relevant areas. So framing water and sanitation as fundamental human rights raises the level of accountability and emphasizes the need for people's participation in achieving these goals. We believe development that is centered in human rights is more powerful, it's more sustainable, and more effective. It promotes empowerment, inclusiveness, and equal opportunities for all. Our office is committed to the goals of better coordination, more streamlined support, and strategic collaboration to make the human rights to water and sanitation a reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nada. And I have to say that this 10th anniversary that you referred to should be an opportunity for us to really highlight the nexus between water and the inequalities that you clearly highlighted. Thank you, Nada, and very, very pleased to see you after a while. I don't know if we now want to move to UNICEF. I believe Henrietta cannot be with us because she's having her global management meeting at the same time, and that was planned way before. So she insisted to send us a video message. So I would like colleagues to please play the message we have from Henrietta. I thank Aretha for the Executive Secretary, Executive Director of UNICEF, and I would like to thank the whole UNICEF team, particularly taking up the vice chair from September, and highlighting in this message 3 key areas, namely the financing issue, including blended financing, the data gap, and the need for us to innovate. Thank you, UNICEF. Thank you, Arietta. I'm moving to the World Bank, represented today by Jennifer Sarah, the Global Director of Water Global Practice. Sarah, you have the floor, please.
Thank you. On behalf of the World Bank Group and its President, David Malpass, I sincerely thank the President of the General Assembly, UN Water, and UNDESA for convening this very important event. We have been absolutely delighted to work hand in hand with our UN colleagues to actively design this SDG 6 acceleration framework to achieve results faster and at scale. All of us have now witnessed how the COVID-19 pandemic has exposed major gaps in water access, with an existing water crisis worsened as utilities struggle to withstand the financial and operational shocks caused by the pandemic. Mandated free water, although important, reduces revenues while supply chains are at risk, and we have seen utilities' cost recovery cut in half in the first few months of the pandemic. And yet, to sustain the gains of the past and put countries back on track for the SDGs, the time to act is now. When COVID-19 emerged as a global threat, the World Bank Group responded with the largest and fastest crisis response in its history. Emergency health response operations have now reached more than 100 countries, home to 70% of the world's population. And in partnership with WHO, UNICEF, and the SWA, among others, we have ensured the inclusion of WASH in healthcare facilities and COVID hotspots, promoting hand hygiene and hand washing, and support to utilities as part of this initial response. And these projects are part of the World Bank Group's broader pledge to make available up to $160 billion in financing to help countries prevent and mitigate the impacts of COVID-19. Our global trust funds are mobilized. The Global Water Security and Sanitation Program is supporting governments and partners to design large-scale programs to crowd in domestic and international investment to build back more inclusively and greener, while the 2030 Water Resources Group is working through its public-private civil society platforms to address water quality and efficiency through circular economy approaches and innovative technologies and financing mechanisms. Our work, our joint work, all of us together, is now more important than ever. Water isn't just for hand washing. It is needed to deliver all of the other SDGs. Girls and boys cannot attend school without water and sanitation. Farmers cannot produce food without water. Firms cannot provide jobs without water, and our precious ecosystems cannot survive without water, as so eloquently explained by Inger. And finally, we cannot adapt to the impacts of climate change, of floods and droughts, without measuring, managing, valuing, and sharing water better, a key recommendation from the High-Level Panel on Water and the Global Commission on Adaptation. Business as usual WASH doesn't work anymore. Recovery from COVID-19 is an opportunity to build back better the water sector, prevent future pandemics, and achieve the SDGs. For that, the World Bank will work closely with governments and development partners to make water a priority and take a holistic, long-term view to improving sector policy and performance. As we remain focused on helping translate our global commitment to this very important SDG 6 accelerator into tangible actions at the country level as part of the UN Action Decade and the next World Water Forum. We are privileged to work closely with all of you to deliver water for people, water for production, and water for the planet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for highlighting not only the work that the World Bank is doing, but also your commitment in doing so. And thank you also for your contribution in working with the UN system on those and other related SDG matters. Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, this concludes this session. And I would like to thank all of you again, including my chief executive's colleagues. You will certainly agree with me that the commitment and unity shown by the UN family will be instrumental in tackling the crisis and the challenges that we are highlighting. I'm also quite wanted to insist on the examples of concrete actions that we have heard during your intervention, and that gives me really hope, and I'm very, very much inspired by those concrete examples that will help us moving forward and looking forward to that. Now we're going to pass to the next session, and I would like to remind all of us that we expect the SG, the Secretary General. So the time management is going to be quite critical for us because the SG has a very specific time slot. So please let us all bear that in mind. So I will pass the floor to the moderators of the next session, Lindsay Aldaco Manor and Alex Whitebrook, respectively, the President and the Vice President of the World Youth Parliament for Water. They will moderate a showcase of stakeholder commitment and accelerating progress on SDG 6. I understand it's quite very early in the morning for Lindsay, which that in itself shows a lot of commitment already. So we thank you for being with us. So Lindsay, over to you, please.
Thank you, Mr. Hungbo, for your kind introduction. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the showcase of commitments on accelerating progress on SDG 6. I represent the next generation of water leaders. Bold commitments to accelerate SDG 6 from the leaders of today are essential. These commitments are part of the promise to my generation to ensure a water-secure world. Today, we have a distinguished panel to showcase stakeholder commitment on accelerating progress on SDG 6. To start us off, we will first hear from Her Excellency Ms. Cora van Nieuwenhuizen. Minister, you may now take the floor.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. Well, dear chairs, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, this meeting is taking place at a defining moment. Not only is the world on the verge of spending trillions of dollars to boost economies recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic, but we've also only got 10 years left to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. So we have the choice between investing this money in the long-term resilience of our societies or wasting it on short-term quick wins. When it comes to water, it's about delivering on a promise. The UN reform analysis in 2017 showed a gap in the UN coverage of water. So I'm pleased to welcome the SDG 6 Global Acceleration Framework. I greatly appreciate the commitment shown by the UN leadership also attending in today's session. At this important point in time, I have two key messages. First, we must improve the resilience of our systems. And second, the Water Action Track of the Global Commission on Adaptation can help us achieve that goal. And when it comes to water, the Netherlands is no stranger to the issues involved. Water shaped our history, and it shapes our society still today. And that explains our long-standing involvement in water issues at UN level, for example, in the high-level panel on water. UN's water theme this year is water and climate change. And in line with this, the Global Commission on Adaptation, led by Ban Ki-moon, Kristalina Georgieva, and Bill Gates, has also included a water action track. It involves collaboration with key stakeholders to make recovery projects sustainable, inclusive, and more adaptive to climate change. And we hope that many of you will join this initiative. Its results will contribute to the UN Decade of Action and the SDG 6 Acceleration Framework launched today. Working towards the 2023 UN Conference on Water, this is one of our main endeavors. As a stepping stone and to help trigger the systemic change needed, the Netherlands will host the first ever global summit of world leaders focused entirely on adaptation to climate change. And that will take place on the 25th of January next year. And with this online conference, we can join forces across the globe to offer hope, energy, and real solutions. And that is my message today to the World Youth Parliament for Water, because this is all about future generations. So let's ensure that we emerge from the COVID-19 crisis more adaptive and more resilient. Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank Inger Anderson from the previous session for her explanation of the word Pula. I'm sure we will all never forget about that anymore. Thank you very much.
To His Excellency Mr. Jorge Luis Montenegro Chavesta, the Minister of Agriculture and Irrigation of Peru.
Your Excellency Guterres, Secretary General of the Your Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations. Your Excellency Gilbert Huangbo, President of UN Water. Ladies and gentlemen, first, please let me apologize for wearing a face mask today. It is mandatory to use them during the pandemic of COVID-19 in Peru, and we're struggling to get out of this epidemic in our country. Access to water and sanitation are essential services against COVID-19 to preserve the health of millions of people. The agriculture sector is promoting the optimization of water use, for which $140 million have been allocated for maintenance activities of canals and drains that allow an efficient use of water. Yesterday, a financing fund was approved to provide $600 million in credits for small farmers to guarantee the 2020 and 2021 agricultural season in Peru, in line with the food security that has been affected by COVID-19. The Ministry of Agriculture of Peru, through our National Water Authority, ANA, reports the following progress in the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals for Water and Sanitation, ODS 6. 611. The national population with access to water service through the public network is 91%. 621. 77% of the population has sewerage coverage. 631. 77% of the population has basic sanitation services, BSS, where wastewater is treated safely. 641. The water extracted from natural sources by all economic sectors represents $8,900 per cubic meter. 642. The pressure of the demand for fresh water is 2 cubic meters per 1 cubic meter of water source supply. Water stress occurs mostly on the coast of Peru. 651. In year 2019, the degree of implementation of the integrated management of water resources is or was 40 points, and it has increased by 10 points from year 2016. 652. ANA has managed water resources through agreements with neighboring countries, such as Bolivia, Ecuador, and Brazil, advancing 14% of surface waters in transboundary basins. 661. Progress has been made in monitoring lagoon and wetland ecosystems through satellite remote sensing and fieldwork. Moreover, we commit ourselves to accelerate the progress of SDG 6 in the following aspects: to implement and to monitor the SDG 6 at the institutional and multi-sectoral levels and at all three levels of government, national, regional, and local, to support the design of standards and procedures aligned with the use of sustainable water resources, maintaining the aquatic communities. Finally, to establish a technical multi-sectoral commission in order to promote the acceleration of SDG 6 in the institutions that comprise it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, for your commitments. Next, I would like to welcome to the floor Her Excellency Lindiwe Nonsibe Sisulu, Minister of Human Settlements, Water and Sanitation of South Africa. Minister, you may now have the floor.
We're trying to unmute. Can you hear me? No.
Yeah, we hear you well.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry about that. Your Excellencies, Moderator, Secretaries General who were with us a little earlier, colleagues. My name is Lindiwe Sisulu and I am from South Africa. I'd like to indicate to you that we're finding ourselves in a very difficult situation, and we welcome this discussion that we have now. South Africa has got the highest number of positive COVID people in Africa, the highest number of deaths from COVID in Africa. And therefore, we've had the full impact of something we had not planned for. We, all of us here, are architects and champions of sustainable development goals, and we agreed that the SDGs are transformational on our agenda, rather than an extension of the MDGs, and that they should be more robust to provide a blueprint for the future of the planet. When these SDGs were developed, little did the world foresee the crisis of the magnitude that has been presented by COVID-19. We have the full effect of that crisis in my country as we speak now. The pandemic reinvented the way that we had perceived water and imposed an urgent and unwitting agenda as a global means to respond to the devastating impact of this particular pandemic. We all acknowledge that the demand for water is rising, and this is happening at a time when the world is facing so many difficult climatic changes. The current pandemic we are all experiencing has indeed found us very wanting, in our country, extremely vulnerable, especially to those people who live in the most rural areas in my country. They remain very far behind what we have promised them, which is access to clean water. Like many countries, South Africa has made great strides in our commitment to the SDGs. For instance, since our independence, we have had a rise from 50% of all households with access to water and sanitation. We've now achieved 79% of that. From a base of 55% with reliable water, we've now achieved 88% in terms of water supply. While these are notable changes on paper, there are areas in our country that are very far behind and remain very much in the grip of apartheid architecture that we found here. We then got the pandemic, and imagine what we were faced with. The first message we got from the DG of the World Health Organization was, wash your hands. Imagine too what most of our people in the rural areas' response was to that. Where do we wash our hands? We don't have water. So it became the most important thing to do for government, for us to be able to deal with the first defense in relation to the pandemic. We then decided to work out how we're going to make sure that everybody has access to clean water. And we came up with an innovative idea, which I want to share with you, not that it is sustainable, but it has worked for us. We put together all the resources that we had, and bought all the water tanks we could find in the country and all the water tankers we could find in the country, deposited the water tanks in all the places that did not have access to water, and delivered water to them on a regular basis. We had to do this almost on a militaristic kind of basis, and therefore when we named the center a command center, because indeed that is how it operated. And this is what we're using up to now. However, we have realized that while it is helping us cope with people getting water, it is not helping us cope with the pandemic, and it is not sustainable in the long run. It is something that has worked for us, but we have to do much better than that in making sure that we live up to the demand that we have. We've covered a great deal of our municipalities, and we continue to do that with glitches from time to time, but it has proved to be a very good way in which we can cover most of the people who need the support of national department. South Africa acknowledges the disruption of the plans that have been created in the implementation of the SDGs created by the pandemic, and at the same time welcomes the acceleration and enhancement that was presented by this crisis. And so for us, we had to find money somewhere. We put this aside to make sure that we can attend to water first. These funds will assist us to deal with the backlog that has been created by our history, and we're battling to cover all areas. We get our source of water from boreholes, from springs, and et cetera, and et cetera. It is on this basis that I'd like to quote the words of our former President Nelson Mandela when he said, "Freedom alone is not enough without light to read at night, without time or access to water to irrigate our farms, without the ability to catch fish to feed your family." Madam Moderator, our founding president predicted today's challenges correctly. SDGs are about development and transformation, as well as restoration of dignity of people around the world. Confirming these wise words more so with our own history of deprivation and exclusion of the majority of its people. It is on this basis that South Africa adopted a human rights-based approach in the service delivery of these essential services, and also enshrined it in our constitution, which is what commits us to achieve the SDG targets. I'm glad to inform you that right now, in the last 6 months, we have developed a master plan, which we would like to share with you. We're very proud of it. And it is very much along the lines that we had committed ourselves to. We seek to create more jobs, eliminate poverty, reduce inequality, grow an inclusive economy by 2030. I could go on and on. We're truly grateful for the launch of the SDG Global Acceleration Framework as an instrument that provides us with a timely reminder not only of the past successes of our historical context, but more of the challenges of our future endeavors and the current situation we're in. The framework further provides a window of opportunity during which to accelerate the implementation of SDG 6 and serve as a call for all member states to embark on a new accelerated path towards a more sustainable delivery of water and sanitation. In conclusion, Moderator, very mindful of the time constraints, on behalf of the South African government and its people, I'd like to reiterate the commitment of my country to deliver on this transformative agenda. And lastly, allow me to leave you with one other quote from our notable President Mandela, which said, "A nation should not be judged by how it treats its highest citizens, but how it treats its lowest ones," unquote. A statement proven correct during COVID-19, because we had to make sure that the ones at the lowest get our priority. Thank you very much, Moderator.
Thank you, Minister. That well, water is the dignity of a person, and that's why we're here to accelerate SDG 6. Thank you very much for your commitments. Our next speaker will be His Excellency Minister Sirajuddin Muhyiddin, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Tajikistan. The minister will be joining us via video as he was needing to step out for urgent matters. Thank you, Minister, for your commitments. I would like to acknowledge the arrival of a very distinguished guest. May I ask your indulgence as we adjust the agenda and now give the floor back to the UN Water Chair.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Excellency, dear colleague, our UN Secretary General Gutierrez has been on for some time, and you will understand that we don't want to abuse of his patience and knowing his agenda. So we will come back after his intervention and to Lindsay for the last two speakers that we have from the private sector buyers and from the CEO of Thirst. It is an honor and a great pleasure for me to welcome SG Gutierrez. Sir, you have the floor, please.
Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good morning good afternoon, good evening. I'm pleased to join the launch of the Global Acceleration Framework for Sustainable Development Goal 6 on water and sanitation. Congratulations to all the speakers. I'm impressed by the commitment, support, coherence and unity shown by the whole United Nations system together with member states, youth, civil society and the private sector. Today, this commitment is needed more than ever. Water globally is threatened by the twin threats of increasing demand and withdrawals and the degradation of water sources and associated ecosystems due to climate change, pollution and other threats. The water and sanitation crisis demands a holistic, systemic and multilateral response. Water and sanitation cut across all three pillars of the United Nations: peace and security, human rights and development. They are integral to each. First, peace and security. As there are 280 water courses shared by 2 or more countries, and about 60% of all aquifers are transboundary, the risks of water disputes provoking conflict over shared basins need to be addressed. Second, human rights. The right to safe drinking water was first recognized by the General Assembly and the Human Rights Council as part of international law in 2010, followed by the human right to sanitation being explicitly recognized as a distinct right by the General Assembly in 2015. And finally, sustainable development. Water is required to deliver almost all other SDGs, from global health to food security, and it is essential for resilience to climate change. It is estimated that by 2040, 1 in 4 of the world's children under 18, some 600 million in all, will be living in areas of extremely high water stress. Today, Sustainable Development Goal 6 is badly off track. This is hindering progress on the 2030 agenda, the realization of human rights, and the achievement of peace and security around the world. Furthermore, we must remember that water and climate are inextricably linked through the hydrological cycle. Progress on SDG 6 will face deepening challenges as our climate continues to change. We are sadly reminded water and sanitation are also key to fighting the COVID-19 pandemic. And washing with soap is one of the most effective ways to limit the spread of COVID-19 and other infectious diseases. Yet 3 billion people around the world, 40% of the global population, lack basic and washing facilities at home. We need resilient and sustainable water-related ecosystems and safe water supply and sanitation services to prevent and contain these and future pandemics. This is why I've decided to add a policy brief on this topic to capture our current learning and to offer policy advice. Dear friends, today I'm proud to see the launch of the Global Acceleration Framework in response to my call to mobilize for a decade of action to deliver the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. I applaud my colleagues for making this happen. I'm particularly pleased to see the special focus on action at the country level and to see how the Global Acceleration Framework will serve the resident coordinators as part of the United Nations reform. The Global Acceleration Framework can improve global water and sanitation governance towards more sustainable management of water resources. It's driven by country demand while aligning the international community to strengthen country planning, implementation, and knowledge sharing. Only through our coordinated action can we best serve member states and benefit all sectors of society. In a world that has entered a dangerous recession, coordination and alignment are more necessary than ever to target the use of our resources in the most efficient and impactful way. I'm also glad that the Global Acceleration Framework creates an annual multi-stakeholder moment to share lessons, knowledge, and good practices. This regular opportunity will help to keep up the pace through 2030. And I am confident that it will contribute to the discourse and provide valuable input to the Water Action Decade 2018-2028, and specifically to the high-level events in 2021 and 2023. A key milestone will be the World Water Day in 2023, when we will meet in New York for 3 days for what will be the first United Nations Conference on Water and Sanitation since the 70s. Dear colleagues, we are approaching the midpoint of the 2030 agenda, and we are fighting the worst pandemic in recent history. I urge all of us to take the opportunity to deliver on the Sustainable Development Promise made to all peoples in 2015. The framework being launched today will accelerate delivery of the Decade of Action through a coordinated and concerted focus on water and sanitation. I thank you for your attention, but most of all, I thank you for your determined action on water and sanitation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Secretary General Gutierrez, for your support and your words. Clearly, on behalf of the UN Water, not only the UN system agencies, as well as the World Bank and our partners, I would like really to make the promise to you here that we are so determined to make sure that this acceleration framework, we join forces to move the SDG agenda forward. Thank you so much for making the time to address us today. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, with this, I would like to go back to Lindsay to take the floor again for the, we have the speaker from Bayers and one from Thirst. Lindsay, back to you, please.
Mr. Humbo, thank you for giving me back the floor. We will now resume our agenda, and I would like to welcome Mr. Matthias Brenninger, Senior Vice President of Public Affairs, Science and Sustainability of Bayer. Mr. Brenninger, we are all keen to hear your perspective from the private sector.
Lindsay, thank you very much for having me, and Gilbert, good to see you from a distance again. I'm very honored to be here today. I think the first and most important thing the business community needs to do in order to contribute to a successful World Water Day in 2023 is to focus on disclosing how water is connected to their value chains. That for me is the key corrective lens to the water blindness that exists today. For Bayer, we have a almost 25% market share in the agriculture value chain. So if you think about it that way, almost 20% of all the global freshwater use is somehow touched by our value chain. And you can imagine that for us, investing in innovation that reduces the demand of water in agriculture is one of the key contributions that we as a company can make en route to 2023. Our R&D budget in agriculture is $2.5 billion. The top 50 companies in the world spend more than $300 billion in R&D. And think about what would be possible if we mobilized more of those R&D dollars to conserve and protect water resources. I also believe, and Inga made that point, we need a strong commitment of the business community to net zero deforestation. That is the precondition for us to maintain regional water cycles. Frankly speaking, rainforest is called rainforest for a reason. Without those forests, we won't have rain in the regions that are currently facing the challenges of deforestation. I also believe in 2023, the invisible hand of the market needs to turn blue. We already see on the decarbonization side that investors put pressure on companies to focus on reducing carbon emissions. I believe the same pressure needs to be put on how we operate and how we consume water as businesses. So the investment community is a key enabler of a successful transformation of businesses in order to preserve water for our future. And as I can say on behalf of Bayer, we are very committed to do our part and to really help make 2023 a success and put again momentum into SDG 6.
Thank you, Mr. Brenninger, especially for your insight on the private sector. Thank you for your commitments. I would now like to give a warm welcome to our representative from civil society, my friend, Mina Guli. She inspired the Running Dry movement by running 100 marathons in 100 days, if you can believe it, to show her 100% commitment to SDG 6. Mina, you may now have the floor.
Body on the line to not only bring awareness to our global water crisis, but to drive action to solve it. I have run thousands of kilometers across some of the harshest places in the world, from the deserts of Antarctica and the Atacama to the rivers of the Amazon and the Nile. I've met the people on the front lines of our water crisis, and I've witnessed firsthand the consequences of our water blindness. Through my work, I've mobilized citizens around the world to step up for change. Here's why. First, people are suffering. 4.2 of the almost 8 billion people on our planet lack access to safe sanitation, and at a time when we're all being told to wash our hands, 3 billion people lack basic hand washing facilities. Just let that sink in for a minute. 3 billion people in a pandemic. Second, healthy freshwater ecosystems are dying. 83% of freshwater species populations are collapsing, and while deforestation makes front-page news, our wetlands are disappearing 3 times faster than our forests. Third, our planet is running dry. 25% of our global population already live in countries experiencing high water stress. And as our demand for more water-intensive food and products and lifestyles increases, and as the impact of climate change intensifies, the situation is going to get much, much worse, with dire consequences. Sitting in the desert in Jordan, one of the Bedouins told me, Mina, the next world war will not be fought over terrorism or oil, but over water. I fear my children will become the first water refugees. Water is everything, but we treat it as if it's nothing. We focus on forests, on climate, plastics, and the oceans, and we assume that managing them better will also take care of water. It hasn't, and it won't. People are hungry and people are thirsty. Supply chains are under threat. Ecosystems are collapsing. And across the world, our economic and social stability is in danger as millions of people are forced to migrate in search of food and water. Our inaction today is laying the foundation for the wars of tomorrow. We are fast approaching day zero. We need to raise our level of ambition, and we need to accelerate our action on water, on the value of water, because water is life for you and for me and for every living being on this planet. When I set out to run 100 marathons in 100 days for water, I thought it was the biggest, boldest way to show what 100% commitment to this issue looks like. But I fell short. My body broke after 62 marathons, and I thought I had failed. But then people rallied around the world. They stepped up to run for water, to share their own water stories and to make their own water commitments. They showed me the power of people united by purpose and passion and perseverance, that individually we can make an impact, but that together we can change the world. The world is ready for big visions. We are ready to step up for water. The time to act is now. Will you lead us?
Thank you very much, Mina, for sharing your touching words and for your continued commitment to raising awareness, advocating for, and committing to the acceleration of SDG 6. The bold commitments of each distinguished panelist here today are the beginning of an accelerated progress towards achieving SDG 6. As the Global Acceleration Framework gets underway, young leaders and young professionals like Lindsay and I will be eager to see how the reinvigoration of concrete country support will work together with young people leading actions on the ground, often with the most vulnerable populations. Of course, the pandemic we're all living through has featured strongly in today's speeches. SDG 6 is far off track, but we've been called to action to build back better. The Secretary General highlighted his interest in increased country-level action. I'm sure we were all happy to see the many commitments on this level. The Netherlands is mobilizing action towards the Climate Adaptation Summit. Peru is increasing their technical knowledge and monitoring of SDG 6. South Africa highlighted the importance of finding innovative new ways to manage water supplies in light of the global pandemic and learning from each other. And Tajikistan brought forward the development of their national water strategy to achieve SDG 6. Our representative from the private sector highlighted the opportunity for investment in better water management, and of course, Mina reminded us how much of a human issue it is that we all face. As always, an intertwining thread of all of today's presentations was the importance of multi-stakeholder participation. As we accelerate SDG 6, so must we accelerate and strengthen cooperation on every front, be it data sharing, capacity building, and everything in between. With those final words, I'll pass the floor back to the UN Water Chair, Mr. Humbo. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, Lindsay and Alex, for moderating this session. As we all know, the youth are mostly affected by the future of water and sanitation. And moving forward, it's clear that we're going to need your energy and the energy of all the youth for this common goal. I was very, very, very pleased to hear from you, and we look forward to a greater inclusion of the youth in the decision-making processes, not only SDG 6, but for all the SDGs. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, this brings our event to a close. I would really like to use this opportunity once again to express our gratitude to the Secretary General for gracing us with his presence and his word that will really be guiding us in moving forward. I also would like to thank all the speakers, all of you in the audience who joined us today virtually to hear about this global acceleration framework. Delivering on our water and sanitation goals and securing our water future require collective and collaborative action from each of us. So just allow me in my last word is just to highlight what our last speaker, Mina, insisted in her closing remark. Ready, are we ready? Being ready. So I would like to close by saying that I am ready. And I'm sure each of us here will want to reiterate that we are ready to get our agencies, our institution behind this accelerated framework. Together, let's do it. Thank you so much for this side event. Thank you all. The meeting is adjourned.